Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to I&E's CCIE Data Center V2 Advanced Technology Series. In today's sessions, we're going to start our next major topic arena, which is Application-Centric Infrastructure, or ACI. And we're going to break this into a couple different subtopic domains that relate to other topics that we're going to be covering later in the course as well. Today we're going to be talking about the basic initialization of the fabric. So actually, first off, just kind of what is ACI to begin with? What are the different components that make up the system? We'll go through the basic initialization of the system. So how do you start it as if you pulled it out of the box? You have it rack and stacked, you have it plugged in, now you're going to start the configuration. Then we'll talk about the basic constructs of how the object-oriented system works, how the fabric access policies work, how the tenants work, the VRFs, the bridge domains, and kind of how all the pieces fit together. We'll look at the configuration both from the GUI interface of the APIC. We'll also look at the CLI to see kind of what the similarities between the regular Nexus NXOS switches are versus the ACI OS. And then once we go through kind of basic infrastructure topics would be things like connecting layer 2 access ports and getting connectivity through the system, doing layer 2 trunking, talking about how the contracts work and the endpoint groups. So how do we determine what particular applications can talk to each other? Like if I have a client coming in from outside of the fabric, they hit the web server, and the web server wants to make a call to the database. We'll see that there's a bunch of different steps that we need to do from a configuration point of view in order to accomplish that. And then we'll also talk about layer 3 routing. So how do we connect the ACI fabric to our outside network? So similar to what we talked about in VXLAN for BGP EVPN, where we have our devices that are kind of isolated inside of the VXLAN network, and then we want to talk to the WAN because we have like public customers that are coming in, and we need some sort of way to connect those to the edge WAN routers. So we'll look at the different protocol options in ACI. Basically the same thing as your regular router or regular switches. We could do BGP, we could do OSPF, we could do EIGRP, we could do static routing. But we'll see that from a theory point of view, a lot of this is no different than any other system that you probably worked with in the past, whether it's regular iOS routers, Catalyst iOS, Nexus, NXOS on your 5K, 7Ks, etc. But the big difference is that the structure of how the configuration is built is much, much different. And it can be very confusing when you're first learning the system, specifically how the different pieces of the puzzle fit together. Okay, beyond that, once we get into our virtual networking, once we go through UCS and talk about Nexus 1000V, we'll also talk about how the ACI integrates with that in terms of the application virtual switch, so basically the Nexus 1KV version that talks to ACI, and then how the ACI integrates with our virtual machine managers like VMware ESXi vCenter. So we have a virtual machine on one portion of the fabric, we want to vMotion it to another portion of the fabric, or maybe vMotion it to another data center. You can use the ACI to control that. Okay, so basically the API controller has plugins for the APIs for things like vCenter, the Windows Hyper-V, SCVMM, which is basically like their version of vCenter. And then we'll also look at how we integrate into upper layer application services, like we'll look at how we integrate with ASA firewalls, talk about some of the other plugins that are available, like the F5 Local Traffic Manager, the Centric Load Balancers, and so on and so forth. So like I mentioned, we're going to be splitting this into multiple different subtopic domains. But first and foremost, we need to talk about what is the system, what are the components, how do we establish layer 2 connectivity, how do we establish layer 3 connectivity, and then we can move on into kind of more advanced implementations. How do we automate the system, like if we want to script it with Python or web API calls and so on and so forth.